Luigi Mangione will not face the death penalty after a U.S. judge dismissed murder and weapons charges against him, dealing a major setback to federal prosecutors. Mangione is accused of killing UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel in December 2024. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges. U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett ruled that the federal murder charge could not stand under existing Supreme Court precedent. She said the charge was legally incompatible with the stalking counts that Mangione still faces, while acknowledging that the decision may appear baffling to the public. The ruling means Mangione can no longer be sentenced to death in the federal case. However, he still faces the possibility of life in prison without parole if convicted on the remaining stalking charges. Legal analysts say the decision is a significant victory for the defense. Former federal prosecutor Nima Ramoni said striking the death penalty changes the entire complexion of the case, even though Mangione remains exposed to life sentences in both federal and state courts.
Today's ruling was a huge win for the husband and wife defense team of Karen Friedman and Mark Agnifilo. Agnifilo, of course, recently almost won the Sean Diddy Combs trial. By striking the death penalty, now the defense can really try this case without worrying that their client is going to be sentenced to death. Now, obviously, Mangione is still facing a potential life sentence in both state and federal court. But if you keep your client alive in a death penalty case, you've already won as a defense attorney.
Ramoni explained that federal murder charges require a specific legal link to federal jurisdiction. In this case, prosecutors argued the killing was committed with a firearm in furtherance of stalking, which they classified as a crime of violence.
Unlike state charges, federal murder requires some sort of federal nexus or a jurisdictional hook. So if the murder occurs on federal property, it's the murder of a government official, it's a murder for hire crossing state lines, that can be federal murder. Or in this particular case, the basis for the murder was a murder committed with a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. So crimes of violence typically include kidnapping, drug trafficking, and terrorism. In this particular case, the government argued that Luigi Mangione committed the murder with a firearm in furtherance of stalking. The defense argued that stalking was not a crime of violence because stalking can be committed without force. Judge Garnett agreed, and because stalking was not a crime of violence, the judge dismissed the murder charges, and because the murder charge was the only charge that carried the potential death penalty, the judge struck the capital sentence in the case.
The judge rejected that argument, agreeing with the defense that stalking does not automatically involve force. As a result, the murder charge, and the death penalty attached to it, were dismissed. Ramoni also criticized the Justice Department's decision to bring federal charges at all, saying the case had already been properly charged at the state level.
My reaction is that this was probably the right decision by the judge and a poor decision by the Department of Justice to charge Mangione in federal court. He had already been charged in state court, and even under the Department of Justice's own internal policy, federal prosecutors don't charge after the state unless there's a compelling federal interest that isn't vindicated in the state case. Here, the Department of Justice probably only charged Mangione because New York doesn't have the death penalty. It abolished it more than 20 years ago. But that's not a good legal reason necessarily to charge Mangione in federal court when he'd already been charged by state prosecutors. What they were trying to do is fit the facts of this case into the federal murder statutes, and there was just no clear match. It was like forcing a square peg into a round hole. Unfortunately, for the Department of Justice, this is just another loss. And even though they're going to appeal to the Second Circuit, they've suffered a series of losses in high-profile cases, such as James Comey, Letitia James. And the question is, are they being too aggressive in charging cases that may not have legal merit?
Mangione still faces separate murder, weapons, and forgery charges in New York State Court, where he has also pleaded not guilty. New York does not have the death penalty. Jury selection in the federal case is scheduled to begin in September, with the trial expected to start in October. Brian Thompson, the former head of UnitedHealth Group's insurance business, was shot and killed outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. The case continues to draw close attention as prosecutors weigh whether to appeal the ruling.